I'd like to welcome everyone to our school board meeting for March 1st. It's hard to believe, and it's hard to believe that this is the last meeting before St. Patrick's Day, but also Easter. Not to scare you guys, but it's time to get on it. So, first item on the agenda is invocation. If you'll please bow with me, please. Thank you for this opportunity to serve. Please give us wisdom as we conduct the business of this school system. We lift up every child to you and pray for protection over them. Please grant us humility in a world that teaches us otherwise. Help us to make decisions that are for the good of all. Amen. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance, and Troop 2151 from Center United Methodist Church will be leading us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, ladies. Wasn't as bad as they thought it was going to be. We told them we were going to make them famous. With a few people, anyway. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion. I have a motion from Mr. Drexler. Do I have a second? I have a second from Ms. Horn. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda is important dates. We've got a full sheet of them. I'll just go through the ones that are in March. Next Monday, March the 7th, Board of Commissioners have their meeting at 6 o'clock. March 8th, which is Tuesday at 5:30, we have a Board of Education Parent Advisory Council at the early college, correct? And those are always great. March 9th, on Wednesday, we have a Board of Education lunch at Central Davie Academy. And March 22nd, we have another Parent Advisory Council at Pine Brook School. And then we're back in here on the 5th. And that's it. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Hartness.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to have everyone here tonight. My mic is hot. Move that back a little bit. It's good to have you here tonight. We're missing Chairman Fuller tonight. We wish him well as he gets to feeling better. I wanted to share with you just a few things, the highlights that have gone on in February, and talk about where we're going next. But last month has been a very busy month for us. It's planning time, and we're really focused on planning for the future and planning for next school year specifically. We've had a series of meetings with principals and directors talking about the budget for next year and personnel in our organization and staffing needs across the district. That's all part of our budget and planning process, and we'll talk about our budget timeline a little bit later in the agenda tonight. I had an opportunity to spend some time with a fellow group of superintendents in a digital learning and leadership institute at the Friday Center on the campus of NC State and talk about the future of using digital resources in our schools, and had several of our staff that came down and joined me as we planned together and talked with other school districts and some experts in instructional technology in our state. We had a joint meeting with some staff with Rowan Salisbury schools to talk about how we can better support teachers with research-based interventions for students who may be struggling academically. So we have a partnership there, a potential partnership with Rowan Salisbury schools to do some training together. So we're doing a lot of planning. And also this month we kicked off one of my favorite things that we do, and that's going out and you meeting with the parent advisory groups. And I appreciate the board being dedicated to doing that every year, spending 4 nights at different schools and sitting down with parents and hearing the things that are going well and the things that they have as concerns or areas of improvement. I'll tell you, it's good for me as well. I come back and share those things with our staff so that we can make our schools better. But I think it's a great communication tool that you had in place when I became your superintendent, and I hope that we can continue doing. I would ask you a question. Did anybody notice at our last meeting of Parent Advisory a topic that never came up? We never talked about the high school. And for 5 years, that's all we've talked about. It seemed like it just came up all the time. So I'm very pleased that we're moving on and addressing a lot of other issues within our school system. So I'm very pleased with that. I want to thank those of you who attended the Smart Start fundraiser and the Dragonfly House fundraiser. Those are two excellent organizations in our community that support the children that we serve. And I enjoyed both of those events and enjoyed sitting with some of you at some of those events to support them. March is a busy month ahead. We have a lot to look forward to. You saw that your calendar it has 2 more parent advisory meetings. We have a lunch at Central Davie Academy, and that week of the 8th, or the 7th, I guess it'd be the Monday, is a busy week. On that Thursday, the Governor's Education Advisor is going to spend a day with us unless she has a scheduling conflict at the last minute like last time she had scheduled. And we're working on a time that maybe you can meet with her, and we'll let you know how that works out. It may be a little short notice. If you're available, we'd love for you to join us for a few minutes and meet the Governor's new Education Advisor when she comes to Davie County. We have an upcoming primary election on March 15th, and I would encourage everyone to get out and exercise their right to vote. And the last thing I would say is back over here in the corner board is the color board that Walter Robbs put together from our color selection committee for the high school. You're welcome to come, and we can explain to you where those colors will be located throughout the new school, and anyone in the audience is welcome to see as well. That's what I have tonight. I have a couple more things on the agenda that I'll talk about later, but that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is facilities update. I'll call on Mr. Jim Moorfield.
Good evening. It's great that it's March. I was tired of the rain in February. But even though we had some really horrible weather, a lot of things got accomplished at the site. And I guess the thing that I'm really the most proud of is the fact that Energy United is scheduled to start April the 1st in installing permanent power to the site. And that is going to help us drastically as we move into doing a lot of the interior work in the building. And that is a great milestone for us. The other thing that they were able to accomplish is on the running track at the football stadium. The interior and exterior curbs are basically in place. Should be complete by probably tomorrow or the next day. And pretty soon we'll be putting stone down and getting ready for the work that goes on for that football field to get it to the point that we can seed it in May, June timeframe. So that's looking like it's going to be a real good event for us. On the first and second floors of the building, the metal stud division walls are mostly in place, and the electrical contractor has installed a tremendous amount of in-wall conduit for the installation of drywall once the building is dried in. A portion of the metal deck is in place on Section C, which is the far west end of the classroom tower. They have started today installing the other half of that section, so we're looking forward to the roofer showing up in a week or so and starting to do some work on that portion of the classroom tower. And the other thing that has happened that in all the bad weather, the sewer outfall that follows is adjacent to Little League Drive is in place, and that's a great event for us. We hit some rock there, expect some more as we tie in the main building, but we don't foresee any real problems. And the steel roof framing in the kitchen, mechanical room areas has started. That's different from the classroom tower. It's not bar joist, it's metal. It's I-beam type construction. And the masons are working in various locations at the building. And we're encouraged about that. The weather's turned great, so hopefully we can pick up some time. And the other thing I need to bring to your attention is that our contract contingency that we had in the contract, we have used all of that money to date. And we will be bringing future change orders through the process of approval by staff. And those will, Dr. Harkness and I have discussed that we would like, when we do the budget reviews, quarterly budget reviews, we would do an overcap of change orders that we have approved or need board approval. So, but that line item in the contract has been exhausted, mainly because of rock, but we've had several credits also. Any questions? I have a couple of pictures showing the clear story of the media center, which is going to be very attractive, and the what the metal deck above the classroom building looks like before we put the ceiling in. You'll never see this again. Are there any questions about? Yes, sir.
Mr. Moorfield, I know this has already been decided. It is what it is, but for my benefit and the ears of some other concerned folks, can you give us a general overview of how it's determined and why is it determined that a new construction would have a flat roof rather than one on a pitch?
Well, it won't be flat. It won't be pitched like the classroom building. It will have probably an 1/8 of an inch to a 1/4 inch pitch, but it won't be. We don't have any flat roof surfaces. And that pitch normally is created by the insulation. So everything drains.
Perhaps the word flat is inappropriate. A more closer to flat roof instead of my house that's like that.
If the expense of putting pitched roofs would be astronomical. It's industry standard to do 1/8 to 1/4 inch pitches. That's typical on commercial, industrial jobs. It would be very expensive to do bar joist, sloped roofs all over the building. And it would complicate the design when you got up to adjacent structures like the gyms and the auditorium. It would really complicate that.
And you really wouldn't be gaining anything.
Well,
in that.
you would lose because
Right.
you wind up paying for volume. When a contractor takes it off, they look at volume. And if you can minimize that, that's good. But none of the roofs bother me from the standpoint of what we've seen in the past and what's typical in the industry.
Being optimistic and trying to remain positive as best we can. If someone were to ask you what kind of really good things are you excited about and where are there any, have we had any uh-ohs or oops or et cetera, can you just give us a general overview of the good, bad, and ugly?
Well, I think the thing that excites me the most is the fact that we were really concerned probably around October timeframe with the football stadium and getting approval to remove the old Little League road, which came across the new football stadium. Once that we accomplished that hurdle, got over that, weather really concerned me. But the GC has made great strides and getting to the point that I have no concerns about seeding the field because we absolutely got to have one growing season before football starts. So I think that's that's probably the, I don't know that we have long enough for me to tell you all the, oh, man, did that happen to me? We've had a lot of those, but that's to be expected. And what, I guess the thing that we've tried to do is identify our mistakes and correct them. And a lot of them have been masonry mistakes, but we are correcting those as we go. We have had several meetings with the masonry contractor and the design team, and there is an ongoing list of problems, and each one of them has been addressed or will be addressed prior to completion. Life safety and the structure of the building is paramount. So those things are typical just because so many things are going on at one time. But that doesn't really bother me. It's just things that we have to stay attuned to and be conscious of every time we're there. And we've gotten really good cooperation from New Atlantic. Exceptional. I mean, they're right there with me when I identify a problem. Let us know how to fix it, Jim. That's their attitude, and that's great. So, we've had a lot of, but we'll have a lot more. But I don't try to burden y'all with those things. We just take care of them and go on. Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, I would just say I'm thankful to have Jim Moorfield, who has been part of building so many schools over the years, who knows what to look for, and who is the eyes and ears of this board and this school system throughout this process. You've got over 100 people working on that site right now. And Jim can point out when something doesn't look right, needs to be corrected. He works with New Atlantic, they get it corrected, and we move on. And we don't have those things to deal with when it comes to a punch list or long-term issues. And that's the value of us having Jim on the site with the experience he has to head off concerns as they come along. So, Jim, I'd say thank you. He deals with things expeditiously, works with the contractor well, he works with our architect well, and we are very appreciative.
Any other questions?
Any other questions? Thank you
Sure.
very much. Moving on to recognitions, and I will call on Mr. Wallace for the first one.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board, guest. I've stood here numerous times over the last 3 or 4 years and had the opportunity to recognize folks, and all well worth their recognition. But tonight, we go to a little bit different level. And there's reasons that we're at a different level, which I will mention those toward the end of a couple things I want to mention. But at this time, we are here to recognize Coach Buddy Lowry. Coach, if you don't mind, if you'll just stand up here. Tara, come on, because I know there's no man without a good woman behind him, and we clearly understand that. Coach Absher, you want to come on up? Coach Mike Absher, our athletic director. Tonight, we're here to honor, again, Coach Buddy Lowry. On December the 18th, I think it was, Coach Lowry crossed a threshold that very few have ever crossed and very few will ever cross, and it's safe to say that. He earned over 800 wins as a head wrestling coach. Again, that list is very small. I have worked diligently over the last 3 or 4 days in contact with numerous reporters, Salisbury Post, Winston-Salem Journal, and obviously Brian Pitts, that does a great job for us trying to determine who was ahead of him. Now, he might be able to tell me. I think the gentleman at South Iredale maybe. See, it's such a small group. They know who they know. Anyway, let me just share a couple things with you about Coach Lowry. He was a 3-sport athlete at North Rowan High School, football, wrestling, and track. He played, he also was a part of Coach Ralph Shatterly's undefeated wrestling team in 1968 when they won, at that time, the Western North Carolina High School Athletic Association State Championship. He was selected as All Rowan County Football Team as an offensive lineman in 1969. He went on from North Rowan to play football at East Carolina University, and he was part of Pat Dye's Wild Dogs defense, right? Yes, sir. A 3-year letterman at East Carolina. He was hired at Davie County School System in 1976. He started as an athletic director in 1991. Again, another threshold. In May of 2009, Coach Lowry was inducted into the North Carolina chapter of the National Hall of Fame. His picture and other recognition is in Oklahoma, right? In 2010, he was recognized again at a national level for earning the Lifetime Service to Wrestling. In 2012, he was inducted to Rowan County's Hall of Fame. 40 years as a head coach, 40 years as a head coach. 809 wins to 126 losses. Almost an 87% winning ratio or percentage. 16 regional championships, 25 conference championships, 15 regional, tournament championships, 16 regional, 3 state championships, been involved in numerous individual state champions, runner-up, and third-place finishes, had 38 wrestlers, 38 young men that have won over 100 matches in their career. That's absolutely phenomenal. Now back to the 40 years. One of the unfortunate things I had to do when I was principal in 2008, and board, no offense if you're on the sitting board then, but Dr. Landry told me, he said, you've got 5 people that you need to tell that they can no longer work for you because of double dipping. That was one of my jobs, and they were all 5 stellar, fine people, and some of you may remember that. Well, this was one of them that I had to go talk with and say, hey, I'm the new principal. Guess what? You no longer have a job working with us. Again, he stayed. Coach Lowry continues to substitute teach for us today, stays busy. He says he has to have a day off. Coach Lowry, 40 years, has been persistent, obviously. You know what to expect. Right, Coach?
Absolutely.
You know exactly what to expect. He shows up. You can guarantee he's going to be prepared. Wow, what characteristics we're describing here that's clear, and then it's evident with over 800 wins, and puts him in a very elite group. But it's not always easy, but at the same time, just doing what we're supposed to do, and that's what the man has always done. He's done what he's supposed to do. Coach Absher is going to share a few words, and then I'll close this in just a moment.
Yeah, Mr. Wallace, Dr. Hartness, the board, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight to share in this celebration. For me, it's twofold. You know, he is a faculty member for a long time. I've been here for 14 years now. He's coached. He's a really good friend of mine, so it's truly an honor to be here tonight and just be able to share a few things with you. Jeff touched on a little bit, 40 years. This is amazing to me that all 40 of those years have been in this school system. When I first met Coach Lowry, I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. I'm not the smartest guy around, but when I found out how many matches he won, I thought I better try to learn from him. And I said, Coach, where have you been? I mean, where all have you coached? Davie County High School, the only place. We all know in today's culture and society, that's not really how it is. Even in high school, there's a lot of coaches who are looking for the next job. But Coach Lowry came here, and he's been dedicated to this place for a long time. To me, that's just simply amazing, and that's something that I think he should be applauded for. The second thing that I have seen from him on a daily basis is he's always done it the right way. I will not call out other teams or school systems. Dr. Hartness and I have had several conversations about this, but he does it the right way. And what I mean by that is he develops young men that come through Davie County schools. He doesn't search. If he graduates a lot, he's always figured out how to reload with those people that come to our school. He's never been one of those guys that sought other student athletes from other school systems. Speaks very highly to the integrity and the moral character of this man. Also along that way, as successful as he wanted our student athletes to be, he's always concentrated on developing the whole person. And you know what I mean by that. The traits, and Jeff touched on them a little bit, that he has instilled in these young men, because that's our job, or I believe it's our job, is to develop the young men and women to become successful in our society. And he's done a tremendous job with that. And I see that periodically by the people that come back and spend time with Coach Lowry, former players. It's impressive. He's had a lot of guys come back and coach and be a part of his staff. Again, that speaks highly, and he's won a lot, but he's never lost focus of what he should do on a daily basis. Again, I asked him a lot of questions when I got here, and I asked him about what he could, Coach, you're so successful. Real simple. He said, Mike, I feel like we can outwork everybody. Okay, pretty simple. And his relationship with our middle schools. He said if he had to pick two things, those are the biggest keys to the success he's had. Because he even, we had two and then else was built. He has great relationships with those coaches, those people, and that's why he continually wins at such a high rate. The other thing I'm going to say is, and two other things, and I'll give it back over to Jeff. He truly loves Davie High School athletics. We made it to the state playoffs this year, and he's calling me on the Sunday before, trying to get me. Tara's calling me, when do you play, where do you play? And not just men's basketball, not just football. He calls me usually on Sunday nights, to be honest. How do we do this week? The fact that he's such a team player is something else. A lot of coaches are just focused on their program. As important as wrestling is to him, he's cared about all the student athletes at our school. And the last thing I'll say is just on a personal note, he's a very dear friend of mine, and he probably doesn't know the impact he's had on me professionally and personally. We all go through some difficult times, and everybody in this room has, but he's been a great friend to me, and I'm just glad that I was able just to share a little bit tonight. So, Coach Lowry, congratulations.
Again, Coach Absher, thank you very much, and he touched on many things, and I was just going to mention the relationship piece. Tara, thank you. Obviously, you've been right there with him the whole time. Tara's one of our retired educators as well. Coach, probably won't get a chance to do anything like this again, but I want to tell you thank you. It means a lot, and we don't know how much you've meant to this place. So we really do appreciate it, and it's an honor to stand here to recognize you tonight. So, folks, would you please join me in recognizing Coach Buddy Lowry.
Well, I don't know how I'm going to follow all this, but, growing up here in Davie County, if you travel in the state and you meet somebody, they'll ask you, where you're from, and you'll say Moxville or Advance, and they won't recognize that. But when you say Davie County, they'll say, well, that's where you got that good wrestling program at. And, you just hear it time and time and again. And, it's hard for me to imagine coaching 800 matches, much less winning 800 matches. But, I can remember I was in the gym when you won the first state title here in Davie County, and there was a lot of happy people in there. But this lady right here was probably the happiest person in that building that night. And she was doing just exactly now what she did that night. I never will forget that. That probably made a bigger impact on me than the boys winning the state championship. But, what Coach Apter said is very important. 40 years of coaching, 800 wins, that's all important and that's big. But the impact you made on the lives of the young men and the ladies that came through Davie County High School, it's more important. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say one of the downsides of being on the school board is you get a microphone in front of your face. But one of the positives is you get a microphone in front of your face at times like these. As far as I never wrestled under coach, but played football, and it's just amazing to think about. It's just amazing to think about the difference that both of you guys have made, and other teachers made in people's lives. You will never know. It's amazing to me. And coaching, there's so many coaches, I'm sure there's a lot of us here that so many coaches meant just so much. You were the most intimidating person, and one of the most, but you just demanded respect, and that's what we gave you. And so, thank you.
One short comment, and I just can't not say anything. I was fortunate, Tara, you know, I got to coach and teach with Buddy Lowry. When I was at the high school, he was always there. And I know for a fact, and he will agree, that one of the reasons, Rex Allen's in the back, he knows this too, one of the reasons, just one of the reasons why Buddy Lowry's wrestling program was so good is because he ran the basketball team out of the gym so that they could have their matches.
And don't mess up his football field either. I've been there for that. When Mr. Moorfield was talking about the new field, I could see he's sitting there rolling his eyes. All right. Thank you. It's a great night. Next recognition, I'd like to call on Miss Noelle Grady Smith for the Spelling Bee winners.
Thank you so much. Got a lump in my throat for some reason. That was just an emotional moment. Thank you, Coach Lauer, for everything you do. We have some very important young people to recognize tonight who accomplished a great feat in the spelling bee. There were some really tricky words this year, and I would just like to call up Amber McCullough from Cornatzer Elementary School, Dylan Osborne from North Davie Middle School, and Luke Ollinger from William R. Davie. Do we have any of those folks who can join me up here? Thank you so much. We have a certificate for you, but I'd like to let everybody know that the poise that these young people showed was amazing. It's so hard to step up to that microphone, keep your composure, make sure that you don't forget any of those spelling rules. And I'm telling you, there were 5 words that didn't match one spelling rule I ever learned. They were tricky, tricky, tricky words. So you are the honorable representative of all the people who couldn't be here tonight. So we want to thank you especially, and I'll recognize all the winners tonight. Thank you.
Luke, on behalf of the Davie County Board of Education, we are so proud of you placing 3rd in our spelling bee, and we are so honored that you represent all the students of Davie County. And to be able to spell those words and not have to have spell check, you're great. Thank you so much.
Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda, and I'll ask for a motion to approve our consent agenda. A motion by Mr. Drexler. Do I have a second? Second from Ms. Livengood. Any discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is our business items. We have a facilities, facilities need with Michael Spillman do a presentation on Energy United propane agreement.
Chairman Junkard, Board, Dr. Hartness, guests, and staff. I'm here tonight to give you a little background on Davie County Schools received proposals from Suburban Propane and Energy United in December of 2015 for the propane service and the lease tank and propane consumption appliances for equipment for the new Davie County High School. That's a mouthful, I'm sorry about that, but this is a 5-year agreement for the purchase of propane. Price is then current price of the propane at the Raleigh Apex Terminal at the date of delivery plus 20 cents a gallon. And a 5-year agreement for the lease of the tank is $500 a month, which is a 30,000 gallon tank, to clarify that. This agreement also contains a 5-year lease contract for the installation, maintenance of all vaporizers, regulators, piping, supplied, all appliances for the specified sum of $50,000. This sum is payable for $833 a month over the 5-year term. Said agreement, said equipment becomes the property of Davie County Schools at the end of this lease term. Is there any questions with that?
Carol, did you have one?
Well, I have a question. I'm kind of embarrassed to ask it because I really, that was a lot. But
It was, I'm
when you
sorry.
were talking about the propane tank, now that's not like the propane tank for the gas grill in my backyard. So what, it's
No,
bigger. So what is it, how much will that do? I guess is what I'm asking.
All of our, we'll have water source heat pumps at this school, kind of like we do Ellis. And we'll have 4 boilers that will maintain the water temperature to those water source heat pumps. Plus, we'll have heat on the makeup air units that sit on top that provide fresh air to each classroom. So we've got to condition that fresh air. Well, economically, gas is the best way to go with this. Since natural is not at that site, the only other logical place we had to go was propane. But with the state contract pricing and the ability to buy a tanker load at a time, we're actually buying it for the same price or just a touch cheaper than what we can buy natural for. So that's a great deal for us. So that's to explain why we have such a 50-foot long submarine's going to be at the back of the school. So.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
Any other questions?
The agreement is for 5 years, and so we're locked into the 5 years. If underground gas goes that route within that 5 years, doesn't matter. But day one of the 6th year, or after the 5 years is complete, we would then be at an option to use underground natural gas or propane, whichever's right at that time.
Yeah, whichever would be most cost-effective for Davie County Schools to use.
And the equipment
Absolutely.
that's going in the facilities would work off of propane or natural gas either way?
Yes, sir. We had it spec'd that way just in case. So it's sitting there ready to go either way.
Any other questions? I will call for a motion. I have a motion by Ms. Owens. I have a second. Mr. Drexler, a second. Any other questions, discussion? All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 6-0. And you'll stay right up there, won't you?
I sure will.
Mr. Spillman will give us speak to us about the rooftop HVAC replacement at Pine Brook and Shady Grove.
Yes, we received bids on 9 rooftop HVAC units at Pine Brook and 1 rooftop unit at Shady Grove Elementary Schools. The bidders were Webb Heating and Air, Commercial Air Systems, and Professional Air Systems. And Davie County recommends to enter a contract agreement with Professional Air Systems for the amount of $234,678, and this includes a $10,000 contingency fee. So nothing goes wrong, it'll be 224. So, any questions on
Any
this?
questions?
These HVAC replacements is on our 10-year facilities plan.
Questions? Call for a motion. Motion from Ms. Horn, second from Mr. Drexler. Any discussion, questions? All in favor? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a public address to the board. Ms. Wilson.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have one person who has signed up to address the board tonight, and that is Ron Keister. If you'll please come to the mic and state your name and address. We would appreciate it.
My name is Ron Keister. I live here in Moxville, near Ridge Park. Wanted to say something about Superintendent Hartness. He took time out of his busy schedule recently to give me some information, financial information, about the new school. I thought he did a real good job. I understood more than I did before I had the conversation with him. So I just want to thank Dr. Hartness for that.
Thank you, and that's our last speaker.
Thank you very much. We're moving on to committee staff reports. Dr. Hartness, budget timeline and process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attached to your agenda item, you have a draft budget timeline. This kind of gives you an idea of the chain of events that happen, and you can see they start in November and end in September, and it just depends on when the state finishes their budget as to when these things fall out, but budget is a year-round process. And here we are, March the 1st. I will tell you that our budget committee has been working hard with the principals and directors and looking at where we are this year in the budget cycle. We're planning for next year. We will be coming to you next month to talk more details about the budget and what we might recommend for the 16-17 school year. I do have on our calendar, we have a parent advisory meeting at 5:30 on April the 11th at Shady Grove Elementary School. And I would request the board consider looking at your calendar, since we're all going to be together already, and possibly consider doing a work session, a budget work session on April the 11th, maybe around 4 o'clock, if we could do that, and then go to Shady Grove at 4 o'clock on April the 11th, if that will work. If y'all can let me know if that's a possibility. That's a little earlier than we've done it in the past, but we can get your feedback, and if we have to have another work session, we can do that in the month of April. Our timeline is we need to bring a recommended budget by May the 1st, then we have to send something to the county commissioners by May the 15th. So this gives you an outline of where we are in the budget process. We're well underway with going through capital request as well as our current expense. So do you have any questions about the budget timeline? Okay, Mr. Chairman, that's where we are.
Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you to discuss the interlocal funding.
Okay, if I can ask the
Formula.
technology staff to switch over to my computer, I'm going to drive a few slides from my computer, and those slides are attached to this agenda item for the board and for the public. We have talked a number of times about an interlocal agreement between the Board of Education and the Board of County Commissioners. And there have been some questions about the approach of how we came up with the draft resolution that we have attached to this agenda item that you've been made aware of for a number of months. So what I wanted to do tonight is to go through analyzing a formula for local current expense. And we do not have my computer up there yet, guys. All right, give me just 1 second, okay? Nothing yet. All right, very good. Okay. So here we are. We're going to look at the formula for local current expense appropriation. We're going to look at three methods of determining funding. There have been some ideas pitched about different approaches for a funding model, so here we go walking through those three. The three will be a local current expense appropriation based on a fixed per pupil expenditure, using the consumer price index for education, and then using the draft formula that was discussed among the chairs, the superintendent, and the county manager that's based on a fixed percentage of tax collected in the county. So first, let's visit the local current expense appropriation based on a fixed per pupil. If you look at this slide will show you how the funding for current expense would fluctuate based on a per pupil fixed allotment that fluctuates based on ADM. So let's look in the left column there. You'll see the fluctuating ADM from 6345 down 100 students to 6245, or up 100 students to 6445. If our enrollment stays the same as it was last year, we're at 6345. If you based the fixed allotment on 1,621 students, the same as it is this year, you base that same fixed per pupil, and we had the same number of students, the allocation would be the same, which is right under $10.3 million. So you can see that the PPP, or the per pupil expenditure, is fixed. If you base the local appropriation on a fixed per pupil expenditure of $1,661, which is equivalent to what is in the draft formula, which is 41.3%, you can see how it fluctuates. And it's easy to look at if you multiply the per pupil expenditure by the number of students that you go up or down. You know, if it's 100 students, it's $162,100 or $166,100. So every year it's going to be a floating up or down based on the number of students that you have enrolled. So it's not something that's going to be very easy to predict for the county or the school system. It's going to fluctuate up or down. So let's look at per pupil statewide data for a minute, and then we'll talk about the pros and cons of using that fixed per pupil expenditure. One of the things I shared with you, I guess it was last month or in January, is we looked at a 10-year analysis of enrollment and spending on education. So if you look back 10 years ago in 2005-06, we ranked 55th in local per pupil expenditure. If you look at overall per pupil expenditure, we ranked 104th out of 115 school districts. We spent $6,522 per student. If you look at last year, we ranked 48th in per pupil expenditure and 84th out of 115 in overall funding for students. So I anticipate with the increase in the local appropriation last year, we got a $775,000 increase. We should see our ranking continue to go up. I don't anticipate that other school districts had the same increase that we did last year. There will be some. So we'll see what that rank looks like sometime in the near future. So what are the pros and cons to using a fixed per pupil expenditure? Number one, the pros, the county and the school district would know exactly what to expect based on the previous year's enrollment. If you used it last year's enrollment going into the budget cycle, if you use this formula, you could say this is how much we're going to get. The cons is it does not adjust for inflation. Several of you are business owners. I bet your business expenses were different in 2005-06 than they were in 2015-16. So it does not adjust for inflation if it's a fixed per pupil expenditure. The cost to operate a school really don't change a lot. Let's say we had 100 students that were a decline enrollment or an increase enrollment. The cost to do business in a school, let's say you broke that up among our 12 schools, that's less than 10 students per school. The cost to operate a school is not going to go up or down drastically for 100 students, either up or down. But the county would have to be prepared if we had 100 more students. We'd have to be prepared if we had 100 less students. So you're going to have a fluctuating from year to year, and you'd have to make adjustments to staffing because 87% of our budget is staff. So that would fluctuate annually. And you're going to see me say that the cons for all three of these, including the proposal we have presented, The con is it's not based on need. Every year, if you read my budget message, I outline that there are needs beyond what we necessarily request from the county. When you look at our ranking, and I'll go back one slide, we're in the middle of the pack in North Carolina. This is not a lack of commitment in Davie County from the Davie County Board of Commissioners based on the trend that we've had last year. It's not. We're in the middle of the pack in the state of North Carolina. This is just a decline in overall ability to purchase goods and services and people based on the allotments that we get from the state and federal government. So I'm not pointing fingers in any way that this has to be fixed here or there. We're kind of dealt with what we're dealt with, and the trend has been the state is pushing more responsibility to local communities, which is like it is in the rest of America. 90% of America is funded much differently than North Carolina. In North Carolina, we're heavily dependent upon state resources because that's the way our North Carolina Constitution was written, and that public education is part of our constitutional obligation of state government. So other parts of America, you really see more of a local commitment and local ownership. There's good and bad to that. The equity in North Carolina across the 100 counties is better than it is in some states where you have extreme poverty in some communities and extreme wealth in others. Those wealthy communities are able to put lots of money into their school systems. In the poor communities, they don't have the resources. So there is a pro and con to that as well, but we're in the middle of the pack, and those are the pros and cons based on a per pupil expenditure. So let's go now to the second option. What if you use the Consumer Price Index? First, what is a Consumer Price Index? We all have heard that term. It's called the CPI. It's a measure of average change over a time in prices paid by consumers for goods and services across America. It really measures the rate of change in prices rather than the level of prices. We all know that across America, the cost of living is different in different parts of the country. We're blessed to live in an area where the cost of living is fairly affordable compared to other places in the country. But the CPI is a measure of the change in prices over time, so it's not regionalized necessarily. The CPI is the most widely used measure of inflation. It's sometimes viewed as an indicator of the effectiveness of government economic policy. It provides information about price changes in the economy for government, business, labor, and private citizens to use as they make economic decisions. So the Consumer Price Index, you would think it's just a certain percentage of a rate of change in the cost of goods and services from one year to another. But the CPI is also broken down into categories. So if you were a food company, or you're looking at the cost of food and beverages, you can go to the CPI index to see what is the price change percentage in those specific goods and services from year to year. If you're looking at housing, you can do the same thing. There is a section in the CPI called Education and Communication. And here's what that looks like. So if you look at the CPI, if you look right in this area here, under Education and Communication, it's broken down into books and supplies, tuition, childcare, college tuition and fees, elementary and high school tuition and fees, and then you get on down and you can look in the communication area. For the sake of comparison, I looked at just the overall education rate of change over time, and you can see this is from 2007 to 2015. The average change is 4.3% per year. If you look down at this line and you went to books and supplies, the average change over that time period is 6.8%. So if we look at and you apply the rate of change in the cost of education in America to our local appropriation, this is what you would get. So if we'll look at this blue line, and we go back to 07-08, our county appropriation was $8.368 million. In 2015-16, if we were using the Consumer Price Index change every year, and that was the growth metric for county funding, the county funding would be at $11.784 million. You can see instead, for 2 years, our track was pretty close to the CPI, and then for about 6 years, our funding was flat. We declined this 1 year in our local appropriation. Last year, we had the increase of $775,000, so we're at 10.82. So if we were using the CPI over this period of time rather than the actual funding, and y'all know that we had a recession in this spot here, then there's about a $1.5 million funding gap in our actual appropriation versus what it would be if you were basing that on the CPI. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of using the CPI. The pros are it's an increase that's based on a widely published and measure of inflation. It could help us to keep up with the change of cost in doing business, utilities, salaries and benefits that are a major expense in our budget. We could afford to add back valuable services to our schools and increase local supplements to teachers. It could be applied to either the per pupil expenditure or the previous year's allocation. So I could have used the same chart and said if we had a fixed per pupil and you change that every year based on the CPI, it would be the same predictor. And it's a predictable measure for budgeting, so you could use that in that way. The cons, the CPI has a higher rate of increase than county revenues do. I don't know that we could use that and the county could keep up with the cost of the education CPI. Our county revenues are not increasing at the same rate as the cost of doing education in America. So that would be difficult for the commissioners to commit to, be difficult for our community. So I think we recognize that as we have when we've made requests in the past. The other con is it's not based on need. And again, the needs that we have always exceeded what the revenues have been. And we've outlined those in my budget message, as we should every year. So that's kind of a look at if you were using the CPI to determine a funding agreement. So now let's move to the option 3, and that is the draft formula that was developed jointly by the chairs, the superintendent, and the county manager. And we looked at the agreement that was in place in 2006, that was in place for just a couple years, and we said, we feel like we can make this even better. We can make it more predictable for the county and for the school district. So the formula that is in the draft is based on a fixed percentage of the total tax collected in the county. It's not based on a budgeted amount. It's based on actual tax collections from the previous year, from the previous year's audit. So you'd actually be a year behind. It would be based on last June 30, 15's audit of Davie County, that tax collection. That's how it would be calculated. We started with last year's budget request. If you'll recall, we requested a little over $900,000 from the county. We got $775,000. If we were to get to that spot, that would be 41.3% of the county's budget. So that's how we got to the number. And that 41.3% is 41.3% of the total property tax that's collected minus the 4 cents that's collected for fire tax, so you don't count that at all, minus the tax increase that was for the debt service for the new high school. So you don't just say 41.3% of all the taxes collected in Davie County. You back out the fire tax and you back out the debt service collections before you calculate the 41.3%. So what are the pros and cons? It's a predictable measure for both boards. It adjusts as the county tax base adjusts, and you saw from the chart that I gave you last time, the county tax base has adjusted over time as property values have increased. If new students move into the district, you would assume that their parents are also going to be moving here and they would be contributing to the tax base. The inverse would be true as well. If we lose students, you would assume that they would leave the county and reduce the tax base. It's based on actual tax collected from the previous audit. It's not based on budgeted or projected budgets or projected revenues or estimates. It's something that is a tangible number that we can all agree on, so there's no debate about that. If significant needs arise, let's say that something really went awry and the state made some significant cut that would be detrimental to our school system, it doesn't mean that we still could not present those needs to the commissioners for consideration. Whether or not they could fund those, we don't know. That would be a decision they would make. A pro is it's a 2-year agreement. It can be modified and amended by mutual consent of both boards. The con, For the third time, it's not based on needs. Needs are much greater than the formula would provide. It doesn't address unfunded federal or state mandates or reduction in support by the state or federal budgets, but it's something that we would have to, if we knew that it was a predictable amount, we would use it as a predictor. We would use it as a planning tool. We would still present our needs to the county. We would still go through the budget process. It's not just like it's a guaranteed, but it's something that you could go into your budget cycle knowing this is what I can count on this year, rather than it being a guessing game as we always are with the state legislature. The con is it is a 2-year agreement. So it's something that, that's a pro and a con, but it's something we would want to revisit. So if you applied those 3 different methods, what would be the outcome? If you look at this slide, if you had a fixed per pupil expenditure of $16.21, that's where we are now, then the allocation next year would be $10.282 million. There's no adjustment for inflation, and it would adjust up or down based on our average daily membership. If you use CPI of 3.7%, funding would increase to $10.662 million. It would be a $380,000 increase from this past year. If you use the draft interlocal agreement, then the 41.3% based on last year's audit of tax collected, minus the fire tax, minus the debt service collected, or taxes for debt service, it would be 10.539. So it would be about a $257,000 increase. If I were just picking, of course, I'd want to pick option B. What's behind door number 2? That's more money for the school system to meet our needs. But do I feel like that would be something that was sustainable, or is it something that the county could keep up with? No, I don't. And that's what's led us back to our original recommendation of the draft that was been presented to you. Okay. I thought it was such bad news that there was an alarm that went off or something. So that's my presentation on the interlocal agreement. The interlocal agreement draft is attached to your agenda item, as well as the interlocal agreement that was adopted in 2006 before my time. So I just entertain any discussion or questions that you might have about how this draft was developed.
Let me make sure I understand this. Now, the 41.3, that was arrived at by taking what we were funded for this year, 10.200.
It was based on what we requested last year.
Okay, so
Yeah, we were at 40.3, so it's about a 1% increase.
Okay. How about, did they look back, say, I noticed you mentioned a recession, did they look back and see how this would have, I don't really know how much, if it affected tax collection during that period of time or not? If we went through a situation where we, had maybe a recession type deal where maybe the county didn't collect that amount of tax.
That's a great question, Mr. Ridenhour, and I don't know. I do have the tax collected for the past 7 or 8 years, but I don't have that off the top of my head. So I think, one of the cons to this, and I didn't have this listed, but if the property values declined over time, then there would be a reduction to the school system. There'd be a reduction to all county services. Mm-hmm. If there was a property tax reduction, that could affect this as well. But I think it would be a great planning tool if it were in place. It's something that we could all count on. The county could predict, the school system could predict. And if the economy fluctuates, then we're going to have to fluctuate with that.
Okay, and I guess maybe another question would be, and I'm sure you wouldn't have it, but, well, you might have the answer, I'm assuming, but that you wouldn't. But say, if this formula would have been applied to the 11, 12 year, how would, what would have been the difference?
I could go back and do that. I could provide that to the board I could go back and apply the formula to the past 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
I could do that.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, last year was a time where we really were in a catch-up mode because our funding had been flat for 6 years.
I was getting ready to ask that. the chart that you had that had the difference between, I think it was a blue and an orange line, that what it would have been had we been on that pattern as opposed to what the actual was. And those flat years and then the acceleration for 2 years. I noticed on all the, on each of the three methods that one of the cons was that it's not based on need. And this is new to me tonight to think about in these words. For planning purposes, except for planning purposes, shouldn't everything we do be requested based on a need? This is the first time I've thought this question, so I may not be even saying the words right that I'm trying to get across. The state is seemingly reducing their amount of money to this school system as well as the other 114. And they're continuing to cause the systems or require the systems to carry out the duties and responsibilities as determined by the state. So I'm getting at underfunded or unfunded mandates. So the financial support from the state seems to be getting less, and it's putting more burden on all local systems. So let's just talk about Davie for now. Our state revenues have decreased. And I think I saw a chart at some point.
State revenues have not decreased. They've actually increased. In fact, the legislature has $1 billion in savings now.
I may be thinking about two different things, though. I know that underfunding and unfunded things was an issue. That's it. If the finances from the state has not decreased, but the responsibility has increased, it's a net effect of getting less money to do more work. And did I say that right? Did you hear what I mean, did it sound right what I said? Correct? Did it sound correct? We're putting more and more of a burden on the local funding source all the time. Do you agree? Am I thinking correct? Do you feel like that's correct?
Well, if, you have multiple sources of funds, you may have multiple sources of revenue. So if the state funding remains stagnant or slightly increasing, and I think we've talked about that before, the state has increased funding to public education, but it has not increased funding at the rate of student growth in the state, nor has it increased funding to sustain the cost of benefits and salaries of teachers. So I guess where I'm at, back to your statement of shouldn't everything we request be based on need? Absolutely. And that's why if you read my budget message, I do outline when revenues are available. These are a list of things that we would like to put back in place. But I also am realistic in that if I went to the county commissioners and said, you know what, guys, here's our funding from the state. We're just kind of steady as you go. But as we've gone through this process of increased cost of benefits, as we've outlined a number of times, we're spending $3 million more on benefits than we were in 2008-09. For me to go to the Davie County Board of Commissioners and say, we need a $3 million increase to sustain where we were in staffing, I think that would be insulting to our commissioners. And I don't think it's realistic. We can't sustain that. I think the state has to rethink what their priorities are. Now, I could go on a long conversation about where the priorities are in North Carolina, the things that we've done with providing opportunity scholarships or vouchers, the other ways that we've diverted money out of public education. That's not healthy to do because it's a reality. The people in Raleigh have made that decision, but that's kind of where we are. And I think strategically as a district, we have to know what our needs are, and we have to be realistic in our requests. Now, Jill, as our attorney, would tell you there's a number of school districts who have sued their county commissioners because of the lack of commitment to public education. I don't think we're in that situation in Davie County. If our funding would have been flat for another 6 years, yeah, you can see where we're going. I think we may have to be talking about how can we increase funding on a local level, but we can't expect our local Board of Commissioners to make up all the ground that the state has lost over the past several years. Does that help?
I think what I was trying to get you to not defend, but explain, recently there was the issue about, or 2 years back, about losing finances for teacher assistants. And then most recently, the issue came across where the state decided that they weren't going to fund driver's education in the school system any longer. So those are under or unfunded things that the school system was going to have to figure out how to come up with the money or reduce the service. Does that make sense? Talk to me a little bit about that. How does that not equate into the state is delivering less funds to the local units now?
I'm not sure I understand what you want me to say there. I mean, I think we've talked through that a number of times, and we've seen, you know, the debate back and forth between the House and the Senate on those subjects, and we landed where we landed. They took away flexibility for teacher assistant funding. They did not end up reducing that. Some school districts were in a bind because they were actually converting that money to teacher positions. We were not. We use 100% of it for TAs. Same thing with driver's ed. They put that back. That's where we get into a situation of we need some more predictability to the budget process. We can't predict what in the world's coming out of Raleigh again. I mean, I'm actually disgusted in the way this state is being led right now when it comes to public education. But if we can have a great relationship here locally, and we can have a predictable model that doesn't meet all of our needs, but it's something that the Board of Commissioners can count on, the Board of Education can count on, I think we can be better stewards and better planners. And we take one factor out, at least, when we're going through the planning process. We know that we've got some type of steady stream of growth and of funding from the county level. We can't predict what's going to go on with the state and federal government.
I believe that the interlocal agreement is probably one of the best steps to go because we spent so many years without one, and it is hard to plan. We did a great job of using our federal money, the stimulus money that came through. We were very careful with that. We were meticulous about saving and using it for our needs. And to me, this agreement with the research that's gone on shows that commissioners and the school board are working together, working for the county, and it's in concrete, it's there. It's a 2-year agreement, it's fluid, it will move, but to have the ability to know it's based on an audit, not something out of the air, to me, it's good planning. And it's good planning for us, and it's good planning for the county.
I agree with Barbara, and having been involved in the past interlocal agreement years ago, I see some great improvements in this one. Predictability is the key word here. You know, we kind of need to know where we're going and how much money we're going to have to work with. But what I liked about this was that there was a piece or a clause that allowed for us to go back in case of something unknown, some catastrophic something or other that we needed to go back and say, okay, we have to readjust that. And I see it as a pro for the 2-year. I understand about the con, but that to me seems like a pretty fair amount of time to see how this works, because it doesn't lock us into anything long-term, but it gives us enough opportunity to see how it is going to work. And going back to the, as Paul said about the needs, I was also involved in that, and I think it's important that the people of the community hear the needs, or at least was in my opinion, of what the principals, and that's how that system worked at the time, they came, they presented to the Board of Education, here are the needs of our school, and that went from blinds in the classroom all the way up to a new roof. I thought that was important. I don't think it's in any way an expectation that it's to be funded, but the purpose of the list of the needs was to let everyone know that the schools have come to the Board of Education and we have put their needs out there. That does not mean that we're, like you said, we're going to go and say, we need whatever number you put out there, some exorbitant number to meet all those needs, because no, it does not meet all of our needs, as you very clearly pointed out. But all in all, I think this is a pretty good plan for us to start with. And again, it doesn't lock us in forever and ever, and it opens up that door for dialogue if we need to.
I just want to make sure that we're clear as well. You know, you mentioned needs in the schools like supplies and repairs and things like that. Those are not addressed with this funding stream. This is just current expense. Those are capital outlay expenditures, and they're held, you know, they come from sales tax revenue and other revenues that pay for those items. I think we're in pretty good shape on the sales tax and capital side, because the state has carved out some of that for public schools for capital expenditures. And we do go through that process of going through that. But a lot of times people will get confused and say, well, you know, they bought this or they bought that technology or bought this, and then we can't afford this person or that person. They're two separate types of revenue streams. So I want to make sure as we go through this that we are talking about current expense operations. That's a good point.
I believe I asked this question one other time, and I don't know, I'm looking at 257,000, what the increase would be, and I don't know if you look back at that, what happened in the years that other interlocal agreement was in place, but if I remember the chart I saw, the increases those years that it was in place, most of them were more than 257,000. So, and I think the school system is the one that decided they didn't want to, you know, it's kind of done away with the interlocal agreement. And
I wasn't here during that time period,
Yeah.
but from what I recollect and what I understand, that the formula was not actually being applied as it was written. So there were some catch-up years during those first 2 years I showed on the chart.
Yeah, I remember one year it was like $655,000 increase. So I just, you know, it just.
And that's where, Mr. Ridenhour, you make a good point, and that's one of the reasons that when we were drafting this agreement, that we based it on a tangible figure that everybody could go to, and that is the property tax collected in the previous year's audit. So that is something that's not an estimated budget, it's not an estimated revenue, it's actual.
Any other questions?
So, Mr. Junker, what we would request is that the board, if you have any further feedback on this draft, that you share that with the chair and vice chair. The county manager has asked for these slides, and I think it's going to be on the agenda for the commissioners to understand and discuss on Monday night, next Monday night.
And will you actually present?
I've been invited to present this, so I'll be at their meeting, and then I'm not sure what their next steps are, but I would recommend that our board consider amending or adopting this next month as we go into the next budget cycle.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on to curriculum. Ms. Noelle Grady-Smith will give an update on the Read to Achieve.
Thank you. I put some detailed notes in the board packet for you. The big news on Read to Achieve is that we will be inviting first and second graders who are struggling in some way with reading. Could be fluency issues or comprehension, and this is to head off having difficulties in third grade. Our camp, we had about 86 last year, and because of the opportunity to invite first and second graders, we do have a particular set of protocols to follow in terms of who we can invite, but we could increase our camp size and double the camp, which is going to mean that we will have to have different teachers, new teachers. We'll have to design a curriculum. We have a curriculum for second grade, which we designed last year because we thought ahead and invited second graders last year, but now we'll also be developing a curriculum for first grade. We have sent a very detailed grant proposal to the Mebane Foundation, and the state has allocated us an increase to help take care of this. But if we want to maintain our low student-teacher ratio, which is really golden, and also keep our Hill Center groups intact, we'll be needing some extra help from the Mebane Foundation, and we're looking forward to giving you another report with more details as the students' testing scores come in and that sort of thing. So we're excited about having first and second grade, though. Any questions?
Thank you very much. My computer's dying. The next item on the agenda is the Exceptional Children Fusion Reading Report. Is that Ms. Custer? It is. Hello, Ms. Custer.
Mr. Junker. I am going to start. I'm not going to do this right. I'm sure I'm not. Okay. Thank you. There we go. Okay. Good evening, board members, Mr. Junker, Dr. Hartness. I want to take just a minute to update you about the Exceptional Children's Program in Davie County. The first thing I want to share is the excitement that we had on February the 9th. Here at the Central Davie Gym, we had our first EC night. Parents were invited of all 936 children that we serve, from speech, OT, to our children who have learning disabilities, as well as multiple cognitive delays. So on this night, parents were invited, and they were notified of this event either through ConnectEd messages or flyers that went home with parents at meetings or in their second quarter report cards. But I just wanted to share with you what a success it was. We were able to have over in the gym, we had over 30 tables set up. We were able, you can see the list within your board packet there, and this is the information that's going in the enterprise hopefully next week to broadcast this and share the great event that we had. But just sharing a few photos with you, those representatives were from across the county and across the state. We had teachers who came to help present information that night, teachers that are provide the interventions that go on daily and from our elementary and preschools through our high schools. Whether it was Letterland, Reading Fusion, Number Worlds, Trans Math, we had lots of different things. But parents and students were able to come, and they were able to move between the different booths that were set up, and people were able to share information with them to benefit their child. We had representatives from the group home that were there for parents to hear a little bit more about. We had behavior services that were there, Daymark, and different providers such as that, so parents could reach out and find out a little bit more about how they can find out that community connection. We try to share those things in meetings within the schools that we're required to have yearly with them and at other times, but this gave us an opportunity to reach more children. I was very excited. But this being the first time at 4 o'clock, I was excited when it started because we had 4 parents there. So just not knowing how many were going to come, I was tickled with that because this was a reach, and my department here at the office did a wonderful job helping me to reach out with them. And we ended up with 39 families being represented. So that has led to, since that day, me being able to connect with 2 parents who I have since been able to sit down with them and help them to talk about their child's future. And especially for some who have the more intensive delays, what is high school going to look like for their child and beyond 22 years old? So it was a great event, and we're already doing surveys and taking feedback about things we can do to make next year even better. So I wanted to share that with you. And then this is another very exciting part for us. And remind me again. Sorry, y'all. I will start by calling up. I want to share with you, this one's in Google. I have an exciting group that I want to introduce to you. Tonight I have with you Miss Amanda Bridges, who works here in the EC department and is one of our curriculum instructional specialists. And so she helps all of our EC children and teachers across the county with different interventions that we're providing, like I mentioned a while ago with Letterland, Number Worlds, Transmath, and our Fusion Reading. I also have with us our three wonderful ladies from the high school, Amber Manzella, who is our program specialist at the high school and lead teacher, and we have Marie Finale and Pam Willoughby. And Marie and Pam are the two main teachers of this program, along with Julie Haynes, who had another commitment. She's presenting at a club tonight about Tourette's syndrome, so she couldn't be with us. But these ladies are going to share with you about fusion reading, and it's an awesome intervention that we're able to provide for our students at the high school. So I'm going to step out and turn that over to them. How did you switch slides? Okay. Good.
Hi there, I'm Amber Manzella. I'm the EC Program Specialist at the high school. I absolutely love it there, and I love this program that we're going to talk to you tonight about. Fusion Reading is a 90-minute block of instruction that can last for an entire year. It alternates every other day with English, and it's intended for students with word level and comprehension problems. Basically, students who are identified EC and who have reading disabilities. This program develops word level skills, basically the accuracy and fluency as students read. Their comprehension level skills are also addressed through strategy instruction and really amazing engagement in active reading with students who haven't experienced a whole lot of success in reading before. Therefore, they don't love reading anymore. It has both embedded and systematic vocabulary instruction and a superb amount of guided and supported practice in reading. In 2013, that's when our first cohort of students began this program at Davie High School. This is a 2-year program, by the way. At this time, only students who were identified EC participated. It was taught in an EC setting, and only with students who are achieving a Future Ready diploma. This year, we've made some exciting changes. Ms. Bridges and I went out to the middle schools, and we did some informal reading inventories with all of the 8th grade students who were rising 9th graders, as well as those who were on Tier 3 with the RTI process. And we combined that knowledge from the informal reading inventories, along with the students' EOG scores, their classroom grades, and their teacher input, and identified who would be the best participants and candidates for this next year as 9th graders in the Fusion Reading program. So, in addition to the courses we already offered in the EC setting, we now have a collaborative English 1 year-long class that offers the Fusion Reading intervention to both students who are EC and who rose as 9th graders on Tier 3 in the RTI process. So we also made the exciting change that our students who are in the occupational course of study, their 9th grade English is now year-long with an adapted version of the Fusion Reading program as well. So we're able to reach a lot more students this year, and we can't wait to see what comes of it.
As with any program, we have to have progress monitoring. As students go through each unit, there are tests as they go through, but when they first come in and as they go through the year, our progress monitoring tool is the TOSCROFT. The TOSCROFT is the test of silent contextual reading fluency. So basically what the students are measured on is their word reading ability. When this first cohort came to us, as you can see from these scores, they were reading on about a mid-4th grade reading level. These were students with learning disabilities. At the end of their 2 years, they were reading at the end of a 9th grade reading level. So our students in these 2 years grew a little over 5 grade levels in their word reading ability. This was our progress monitoring tool just with their reading ability. At this time, we're not measuring yet comprehension, so we're working on that progress monitoring piece. But just from this Fusion Reading program, our students' ability to read words grew 5.3 grade levels. So now these ladies are going to talk to us about a little bit of information about our dropout data.
Hi,
I've been asked to speak. I was Marie Pinelli. I was lucky enough to be involved in this program from the very beginning when we first started touring schools, looking for reading intervention to bring to the high school. There are very few programs that are directed towards high school and middle school students. So I was there. We started it in 2013, and we started with 35 students. 32 completed the first year, and we have had some students move out of the county. We've had some students go to CDA or OCS, and we've had several that after the first year just made such great gains that they went right into collaborative semester long. 9 of the 32 ended up in the collaborative. 23 students started English 2 Fusion year-round. 20 of those students completed it. Of the 20 students that completed the program, we have had 3 that have dropped out their junior year. And we really fought hard to keep those 3. But we realized that we had students starting high school reading at an average of a 4.6 grade level. And to see that they are no longer functionally illiterate, they are reading, they are able to read their textbooks. We wish we could have kept those 3, but we're extremely proud of the 17 that completed the program. And of those, very many of them have finished English 3, which is research paper year. It is only semester long. There's no longer a year-long component. Of the students that have completed the program, some are in it now, not a single one of them failed English 3. So we're tremendously proud of their success. The group we have now, we tested at the beginning of the year and mid-level. These would be our Fusion 1, English 1 students. The group that is in the Future Ready course of study, taught at the resource level, went from an average of 4.5 grade level to 6.28. So they already showed about 2 years' worth of growth. Occupational study course of study students started at about a 3rd grade level and made about a year's growth. The collaborative group that I teach along with Hannah Miller, who's our English teacher, also EC certified now, started at a 5.8 grade level, and by the middle of the year, they were at an 8th grade level. So about over 2 years of growth. And I can see that you have to wonder if these statistics are correct. How can they possibly make so much growth? It doesn't, this program isn't magic. We're not magic. The really, really big difference was these students hadn't read anything. They'd never trusted themselves to read. They did so many things, the Hill RAP program, so many things that were teaching them to read, but they never believed that they could do it. So when you put them in front of a book that they like, that's written at their grade level, when you surround them with peers that they can read out loud in front of without being embarrassed, when you expose them to these same things every day in this small, nurturing environment, they read and they read and they read, and then it's like watching them jump off a cliff and realize that they can fly. They really just do it, and when you see them take that leap of faith, it's wonderful. They've asked me to talk a little bit about how the lessons are set up, and there's routine and there's continuity with these lessons. It's structured the same. They come in every other day. They know what to do when they come in. They know what they're doing in class. They know when they're going to have to switch from doing what they want to do to the next activity. We start out every day with a 5-minute warm-up. Then we do 20 minutes of what we call thinking reading, which is putting students together with a book that they're going to like. Almost everyone does. High interest, low Lexile levels. The Bluford series is one of the series we use. There's also a collection of short stories. We do that for 20 minutes, and each student takes a turn if they're willing to. And they read out loud and they ask questions. Then we go into our explicit instruction, and these are the strategies that we teach throughout the year. These are modeled. We guide them through it, they practice it, and then they work on their own or with partners until they've mastered it. And we wrap up each class with a vocabulary lesson that's affix-based, that shows them it's embedded in the curriculum. These are difficult academic level words, and they start to learn to recognize prefixes, suffixes, and roots. Oh, I didn't realize it did this, I'm sorry. So it basically, year 1 is these 4 sections, and then year 2, we add more strategies. We start with predictions, getting them to think about what they're reading ahead of time. A possible selves component, which is a motivating unit to really build students' engagement and motivation. They have to write mission statements. They have to really analyze themselves, their strengths and weaknesses. We do a summarization strategy, and then the end is a pass strategy, getting them ready for those big exams. Throughout it, we integrate the strategies with their curriculum. So we'll work with their world history teachers, their science teachers, civics, whatever we can do to try to get them so that they're using the skills they're learning in our class throughout the curriculum. Here's an example of what some of the stuff looks like. It's a short article. This is one of the strategies. We give them mnemonic devices to learn. This is what the vocabulary looks like every single day for 2 years. This is what they do for vocabulary. They follow these steps. And by the second year, they do it like that. They start so they don't even have to look. They know exactly what the prefixes and suffixes are that they're learning over and over again. And this is just some student samples, personal mission statements, and other work they've done. I think that's it, unless there are any questions for any of us.
Could I just say one quick thing? I was very happy to be part of the selection process for Fusion. I think we did not imagine that we would have so much enthusiasm around it, and I think the fact that they are building word knowledge is not the same as comprehension, but it is the stepping stone to comprehension. And so once a child feels confident, then there's really no limit to where you can go. So I'm so proud of the work that they've done, and just wanted to say that.
Mr. Chairman, I would just echo those comments. I know that several of you came to my office and wanted to share the successes that you had had with this intervention strategy, and I said we would need to really share this with the board and with the public. It's the reality that all students can learn. They learn at a different pace. They're at a different place in their life, and these ladies are taking them where they come to them with whatever skills that they have, and some of them have some significant learning disabilities, and to see the growth that they're getting and teaching them reading is phenomenal. So I want to say thank you. It's a wonderful dropout prevention tool. It's also a life skill that they can take for the rest of their life, and it sounds like we've landed on a process that is working, and for that I say thank you.
It's interesting that you said that it's not magic, and I know what you're saying, but it sure feels like magic. And whenever you guys, with the passion that you guys bring to it and stuff, it's amazing. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Dr. Hartness, this is something that several people have brought up to me as a former 9th, 10th grade biology teacher. And then sometimes I had some people that didn't do so well, but they liked it so much they came back to me as a senior taking biology. Can you describe to me or to us what kind of interventions are taking place now that didn't take place some years ago, so that a student who is at whatever age they are this is high school students, what happens now that didn't happen several years ago, that students are identified earlier so that they aren't 5 or 6 grade levels behind when they get to the high school?
Sure, be glad to address that, and you saw one of those interventions here tonight. You also saw how they're collaborating with the middle school to identify students before they even get to the high school that are behind. If you back up even farther, we have a system that we're moving to called MTSS. It's a multi-tiered system of support, and teachers are identifying students that are not necessarily on grade level at a very early age, and putting research-based interventions in place with those students in a regular classroom setting. And we have different tiers of interventions, and once they get to a tier 3, Then we have referral to other additional services through the Exceptional Children's Program. But this is not something that you just wait to get to high school. But we also have to recognize that we have students that transfer into Davie County schools who are behind. We have students who go through the school system and, you know, they have connections with teachers, they have research-based interventions, but in their growth and development, they grow at different paces. And it may be fourth grade, it may be sixth grade, it may be ninth or 10th grade before that click takes place and they're getting back on track to where they are. So a lot of good things in place, and I'm not the curriculum expert, that's my former life, but these are, and I trust them to them and all of our other teachers that are putting these interventions in place every day to get students on grade level.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Davie County High School construction budget update with Ms. Smink.
Thank you, Mr. Junker, members of the board, Dr. Hartness. You have, it's on board docs, and Savannah is also handing out for you a hard copy of the update, the new high school budget update for, as of today, March 1st. Again, as in the past, the budget is there for you to see on the left side of the, this document. And on the right side, on the top right-hand corner, you'll see the expenses to date. Our main vendors at this point are Walter Robbs, Gray Engineering, S&ME, Mr. Moorfield, and New Atlantic. Eastern Structures done a better part of their work already. So to date, we have paid just over $20 million in fees for the new high school, and that is 32% of the budget. Are there any questions at this point?
Mr. Moorfield mentioned the contingency. Have we spent that?
Yeah, let me explain that, Mr. Ridenhour. It's a good question. So if you look on the left side, under construction contract, phase 2, that green line that's there, 52.718 million with New Atlantic Construction. Within that 52.7 million, there's $250,000 that was in their contract as contingency. We have spent that contingency within their contract. So additional change orders from this point forward will come out of the purple line, the owner contingency, the $930,000. So, and as he stated, the majority of that contingency was rock removal, which is anticipated. And when you look at a project this size or any school project, the risk for contingency is on the front end of the project typically. You're going to have some more rock removal as they finish the sewer installation. So we'll have some more change orders related to that, I anticipate. But the majority of other things are owner-requested changes or mistakes that they find in the plans that the contractor or one of the subs find, and they have to make adjustments along the way. But we're 10 months into this thing, and I think we're in really good shape according to Jim and our architect for our contingency.
Any other questions? Excuse me. We'll move on to report from Mr. Wallace on human resources.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was moving through the budget there. Like to, as typical for the last 4 or 5 years, like to recommend that we set Davie County High School's graduation date for Saturday, June the 11th at 8:30 a.m. in War Eagle Stadium. And you can also see there that Davie County Early College's graduation is set for May 21st, which is a Saturday as well, on 11 a.m. at Calvary Baptist West Campus. And that one is typically set much earlier due to scheduling and accommodate indoor facilities. And I'll be glad to address any questions if there are any.
I guess my question, Mr. Wallace, is was there a reason why we were moving it to Calvary versus?
Yes, ma'am. There was a conflict with the Brock.
Okay.
There sure was. Because typically we have it there.
Mhm.
And Ms. Absher, principal, worked with her staff and looked for a local arena or building that could accommodate. And I understand the church was willing to do that.
Well, that was very
Right.
kind of them. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
And also get you to speak about the school calendar.
Yes, sir. I think most of you have seen these changes. I will not read those to you, but that is list all of the changes that were made to recover our lost time. And with both of those calendars, both early college and the traditional calendar, have been posted on our website. And again, if anything needs to be explained, I will, or just take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Last but certainly not least, Ms. Erin Foyle will give us a report on testing and accountability.
Good evening. I'm here to wrap you up this evening. Almost a year ago, Jenda Haynes came and talked to you about some changes that were to happen this year with how our students are held accountable, so how their GPA is calculated. Those changes were due to state board policy that changed. The first one was the grade scale itself. So the grade scale itself changed to, before, high schools had a choice between 4 different grade scales. Davie County Schools chose to use the augmented numeric grade scale, which meant that before it was a 93 to 100, that was an A. A 96 was a 4.0, but when you drop down below a 96, between a 93 and a 96, still an A, but no longer a 4.0. So that's the way our students' GPAs were calculated for a long time. This year, when our grade scales changed, all A's, now between a 90 and 100, are worth 4 points, and all B's are worth 3 points. So there's no longer that augmentation or that shading between the different numeric numbers inside of those letter grades. The other big change that happened was about added value or weight for our courses. There was a lot of discussion at the state board level about weighting. Previously, our students received 2 extra points for AP classes. They received 1 extra point for honors classes. The problem with that is that when they got to college, sometimes they would consider, if you're in an AP class, that their A-level work was a 4.0, except for it's really a 2.0 because you got those 2 extra points. So the concern from colleges was that students were getting a false representation about exactly what quality of work they were producing. So the state, in response to that, they did a change to the weights that happened. So honors class now receives half a point extra, and AP classes and college classes receive 1 point extra. The weighting happens for freshmen this year. The grade point scales happen for all grade levels this year. So what we have seen, and what we will continue to see, the cumulative effect of those 2 changes, is a condensing of GPAs. So I took the last 2 years' worth of students that graduated, and I looked at their GPAs for those last 2 years. You could see as much as a 0.5 point difference between their GPAs in the top 15 students. I saw no ties in the last 2 years, and there was a pretty wide spread. Because of these 2 things, when I went through and I took last year's students and the students before that graduated, and I altered their grades, I altered their GPAs to match what it would be like for this year's freshmen, all 4 years long, if they had the new weighting and the new grade scale. What we saw was a condensing of the GPAs. So 0.2 to 0.3 gap in number 15 to number 1, and lots of duplicates or ties, if you will. So this is something that we see coming, okay, especially for our current freshmen as they get closer to their senior year and they go to graduate. We should see this condensing of GPAs for these students. We've formed a committee. We will be meeting next week, And it's formed of administrators and principals, parents, counselors, and we'll be getting together to discuss maybe alternate ways to recognize our graduates other than the valedictorian and salutatorian way that we recognize them right now. So we will be discussing those things. Latin honors is a popular one. There's lots of different counties in the state that do that currently. And so we'll be looking at those different ways to do it and bringing ideas to the table and having those discussions. Once we do that, we'll be bringing some ideas back to you for your approval. Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think most of the time you present, everyone's scared to ask a question. There's just so much to process. Yes, thank you for all your work. Last item on the agenda, unless someone has anything to say, I definitely feel like I need to thank you guys. Thank you to the Lowrys and what you mean to this community and what you've done. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing, Clint? Thank you. We have such great teachers in Davie County, and obviously Mr. Lowry's been here 40 years and done so much. I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention that we lost a teacher this week with Sheila Tribble. For those of you who did not ever go to South Davie, and because I think that's the only place that she ever was. I know Clint knows her very well because we were kind of there together, weren't we, back when you were in the 7th grade? Yeah, together in a different way.
You was a teacher, though.
No, well, anyway, I just would ask for you to pray for her husband and her children and her grandchildren. I think if you didn't know Sheila, I mean, she to me, I can remember just being in the halls and you kind of heard her, whether you were there or not. She was just this very vibrant person and gave so much of her heart and soul to the students of this county. So I would ask for your prayers and to remember her. Thank you.
I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Paul, you've been on the run. So moved. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Drexler. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Rittenhour. All those in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.